For the fifth time in 8 years and the second straight year, the Houston Texans in the first round of the NFL draft did nothing. They didn't make a pick. Why did I watch that? Instead of trading up, as had been rumored for an offensive lineman, also rumored, the Texans traded out of the first round with the New York Giants. We'll talk about that trade, another move that they made today, and everything else that happened in the first round of the 2025 NFL draft over the course of this coming show. I'm Paul Gallant, and this is the Gallant Says podcast.
A radio show host in Seattle called Paul Gallant.
Paul Gallant's wondering the same things a lot of people are.
You are definitely living in the hindsight world today, Paul.
Do you feel there's been a consistent theme with the interceptions?
I think every interception really has a different story.
I was just kind of curious what Paul gets to see.
Grow up, mother. Are you kidding me?
Paul Gallant, what the hell is wrong with you?
Hello and welcome aboard the Gallant Says podcast. It is Thursday, April 24th, 2025, 11:21 p.m. Central Time, live on YouTube at Paul Gallant, on Twitch at Gallant Says, on X or Twitter at Gallant Says, Instagram at Sports Gallant, and on Facebook at Paul Gallant Sports. If you haven't already, like this video, subscribe, or do whatever you're supposed to do on the social media app of choosing that you may be consuming this on. Generally, it airs Monday through Friday around 4 p.m. Central Time. It also airs occasionally after major Houston sporting events. Last night, we chose to do it at 3 a.m. after I finally got home from the Rockets-Warriors game at Toyota Center. I don't think we're going to do a 3 a.m. live stream anytime it gets here. It's also available after the fact wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify as well. If you want to cut me off mid-thought, super chat me on YouTube. And guess what? I'll play this.
Paul, stop talking. Listen.
That's former Houston Texans left guard Wade Smith. I will stop talking. I will address your comments right away. If I don't worry. I will eventually get to those comments. Shout out to you, Furious Rufus, on YouTube, hanging out in the chats. What's up, Derpy Entertainment as well. So the first round of the 2025 NFL draft is in the books, and the Texans did make a trade, and that's all they did. But they didn't trade up, which is what a lot of people were thinking they would do, and I think hoping that they would do. Because I think that people wanted the Texans to bring in a real impact, high talent, highly touted kind of player aboard the offensive line going into next year so that CJ Stroud doesn't die next season like he almost did so often last year. So the trade, they move back from pick number 25. They send that to the New York Giants, who ended up taking the second quarterback in this year's draft, Jackson Dart, out of Ole Miss. And in exchange for that, they got pick 34, the second pick tomorrow, pick 99 tomorrow, a late third-round pick. They also get a 2026 third-round pick. They got a lot in return for that pick. So from a value perspective, nice. But from a I want to see the Texans do something during the first round of the NFL draft perspective, especially if you're one of those poor folks that keeps on going to NRG Stadium for the draft party. Damn it. That's what you got to be thinking. 2 straight years they haven't drafted in the first round. Okay, 2 years ago you get it because they trade up. They get CJ Stroud. They get Will Anderson, right? You're cool with that. But in 5 of the last 8 years, they haven't made a first-round pick. Isn't that nuts? 2018, 0. That's due to the Deshaun Watson trade. 2019, they did draft Titus Howard. In that offseason, they also traded a lot of first-round picks to get Laramie Tunsil. Their 2020 and 2021 first-round picks. So no first-round pick in 2020 after a god-awful year. No first-round pick in 2021, Nick Casario's first year on the job. Another brutal year the season before. 2022, they get Derek Stingley and Kenyon Green. Stingley's awesome. Green, bye-bye. You got C.J. Gardner-Johnson for him at the very least. Super Bowl champion C.J. Gardner-Johnson, who gets a lot of interceptions. 2023, you get C.J. Stroud. You get Will Anderson. That's fun. And then last year, you got Kamari Lassiter in the second round. No picks in the first, no picks in the first tonight. It is a bit of a bummer. The first round of the draft is the fun round of the draft. The other drafts, the other rounds of the draft, those are the draft rounds that I think you watch if you are a super diehard football fan. If you're watching on day 3, you are a real football junkie. Day 2, you do see some interesting things happen. But for the most part, you are sitting back. You are probably doing other things on your phone. You are maybe watching another television show while you keep an eye on in the background who your favorite team might pick. It's not the same event that it is on day 1. As far as what Nick Caserio said moments ago to Houston media at NRG Stadium about what just went down, Nick Caserio said this about where they are tomorrow. They have the second pick to open up day 2, pick 34. Quote, "We feel really good about the spot we're in. D'Amico and I feel really good about tomorrow." More from Nick Caserio, getting all of this from my guy DJ Bieneme, Houston Texans beat writer for ESPN.com. During the mid to upper teens, the Texans knew they were going to move out of the first round. Caserio did admit this. One of the players that the Texans were willing to potentially draft at pick number 25 is still available. So there you go. It's kind of weird. He's been a little cocky this offseason, and I don't have a problem with it. I don't have a problem with Nick Caserio trading out. It's more just, damn it, I watched that all for that. It's just more me just being annoyed I spent all that time, you know? But tomorrow, the picks that they'll have, pick 34, a second rounder, pick 58, a second rounder, pick 79, a third rounder, pick 89, a third rounder, and pick 99, also a third rounder. And before the draft, Nick Caserio made the 22nd trade. Check that. The 23rd trade. My bad. He had 22 going into the draft. The 23rd trade of his time as Houston Texans GM. He traded 2 fifth-round picks, one this year, pick 166, and one in 2027 to the Cleveland Browns for 2 sixth-round picks this year, picks 179 and 216, and a 7th-round pick as well, pick 255. So they have a lot of 6th and 7th-round picks, and they have a lot of 2nd and 3rd-round picks. 2 seconds, 3 thirds tomorrow. We'll see if they use those to move up, if they trade back. Yada, yada, yada. Let's read some comments here. Joaquim Semeo, sorry if I'm butchering your name. What's up? Your super chat. Is that Windows 95? I suppose maybe it doesn't look great on phones because I keep on thinking that people are watching these on TV. So we might do a little jazzing up with the whole layout of the Gallant Says podcast live stream. Toro McJohnson says, imagine going to a draft party. Toro, I used to have to do that. When I was working at the Houston Texans flagship, I had to go there every single year. And I'd sit around and I'd walk around and I'd like put my microphone in people's faces. Like, hi, do you like what the Texans are doing at the draft? Who do you want the Texans to take? And then they would say like, because they're probably intoxicated, I'll take whoever they get. And of course you run into some fun people. Oved, I met Steve Beckholt, the Ultimate Texan, among other Houston Texans fans. So this is not me dumping on them. It's more just that's what I had to do, and I didn't really enjoy doing it, you know? Walking around and doing like man-on-the-street interviews. Man-on-the-street interviews are hard. They really are. Because you are really digging and digging and digging to get one person that's actually memorable, that's funny, that's got a hot take, that's angry. You see a lot of those man-on-the-street interviews these days. A lot of them are staged, which does bum me out. Maybe I should be faking everything I do. Maybe I should just be a complete fraud. Anyway, some comments on YouTube. Derpy Entertainment says, every team got what they wanted except me. My organization is a joke, so don't feel bad, Texans fans, with all these trades. At least you have your quarterback of the future, unlike mine. I hate my Steelers, man. You got it pretty good as a Steelers fan. I don't know who you wanted the Steelers to get. Did you want them to get Shedeur Sanders? If you were listening to the premier broadcast of the NFL draft, the guys on the NFL Network, that's got Rich Eisen. It's got Charles Robinson. It's got Daniel Jeremiah. Those are the guys that I pay attention to the most. It's also got that guy from Fox whose name is eluding me, the college football dude. It'll come to me at some point. But the NFL Network broadcast is the way to go. I'm sorry. There's too much Mike Greenberg in my life. I can't do ESPN. And I didn't do the ABC one. That's the college football guys. I want the guys to have a little bit of the NFL insight when they're making this stuff happen, you know. I'm an NFL guy. I'm not a college football guy, you know. I think you're okay, man. This is not a great quarterback class. I mean, the Giants, I think they were really desperate trading up to that spot where the Texans are. And good job by Nick Caserio being on the phones, making that phone call. If there wasn't anybody that he wanted to pick number 25, I'm sure that the Giants are probably looking at themselves in the mirror, thinking to themselves, shit, like Jackson Dart's got to save us. If you're Joe Shane, their general manager, if you're Brian Daboll, their head coach. Daboll likes Jackson Dart. We heard a lot of rumors about that over the last couple of days. So, hey, they got their guy, but if you're the Giants, how good do you feel about that? You traded a bunch to move up into the first round for a GM and a head coach that aren't necessarily going to be here next year, and your stopgap is Russell Wilson, who's no longer the Russell Wilson of old. Are the Giants going to be okay with things if it's a 3-win season? It could be a 3-win season. That Giants team stinks. It's really untalented, and it's not going to get much better this offseason. If you're trading for a Jackson Dart, you're giving up valuable picks, 2 of them on day 2, and then another one down the road to get this guy. I mean, he better work out, and if it's a guy who's being acquired towards the back of the first round, odds are he's not going to be that great. You know, odds are generally the quarterback is never the guy that you pick in the first round. But I feel like you're okay, Mr. Steelers fan, Derpy Entertainment. Some comments. LA Rams, says Dennis Guevara, got a better haul than we did for the 25th pick. Well, you also got to factor this in, and we will talk about the entirety of the NFL draft. The Falcons are crazy. I think this is the second year that people have been looking at what the Falcons have done and are like, are you guys fucking drunk? What are you doing? The Falcons, to trade up with the Rams, traded pick 46, 242, and a first-round pick for the Rams' 26th pick, which is the one that they selected at, and 101. I don't know why the Falcons felt the need to do all that to draft James Pierce Jr., and I'm not going to lie. The guy could be good. The guy could be bad. I didn't study his tape, you know. Basically, the most film study I did was really just reading Lance Zierlein mock drafts to mock the NFL draft's pre-draft coverage. And we just looked for the unintentionally erotic lingo that Lance Zierlein used with some draft prospects. And if the guys had a lot of it, we'd put them on our board. If they didn't have a lot of unintentionally erotic lingo, we kind of left them off, you know? So I'm looking at that trade, and I'm thinking that's more about the Falcons than it is about the Rams pulling something off. And sure, okay, maybe the Texans could have gotten that haul for that pick. But, I mean, picking up the phone and calling the Giants, who you know need a quarterback, is a lot more plausible than picking up the phone and calling the Falcons. Like, what do you think the Falcons might need? I'm sure the Falcons initiated that phone call, and that price ended up being what it was because the Falcons initiated, you know? Where I think with Nick Caserio, he probably called the Giants, and the Giants were like, hey, man. He told the Giants, listen, you want your guy? This might be the last chance to do it. Some more comments here before we talk about everything else that went down in the first round of the NFL draft and maybe some alternate universes that the Houston Texans could have found themselves in. Tora McJohnson says the Patriots need to draft Shedeur Sanders. They need a real quarterback. I think Tora McJohnson is trolling me. For those who don't know, I am a Patriots fan. They got the short arm tackle from LSU, Will Campbell, and he cried. I loved it. I think he said he'd die for New England. Fuck yeah, man. Tora McJohnson also says, couldn't Nick have just traded the pick before the draft so we could save everyone time? These are the great questions. These are the very great questions. On Instagram, Astros Flag World Tour asks, Paul, after this draft, was it worth it to do that live stream at 3 a.m. this morning? No, I'm fucking tired. And I sat through that whole draft. I had some coffee to sit through that whole draft. I was starting to nod off. It was not worth doing that live stream at 3 in the morning. I should have woken up early and done the post game for that afterwards. I'm so pissed that they play these stupid West Coast games to cater to the Golden State Warrior West Coast crowd. And I get it. It starts at 6:30 for them. So it's a little early for them, but it was annoying. That game lasted so long. It was 3 hours. It was a 15-point game. Good God. And then it took forever to hear from everybody after the game. I didn't get home till about 2:15, 2:30, leaving the stadium at about 2 o'clock. Ugh. Put all my notes in front of me. Next thing I know, it's 3 a.m. And since I'm such a plodder, I move so slowly. I didn't get things started till 3. So there you go. We are going to get back to doing this at 4 p.m. Central Time at some point. This week just has been an eventful week when it comes to Houston sports. Don't you know? Anyway, if you have any other thoughts, you can press the super chat button to interrupt me, or just have at it. I'll get to it eventually. Before we talk about everything else that went down in round number 1, I'm really curious as to where the Houston Texans might have found themselves if they still had pick 56, the 24th pick in round 2 tomorrow from the Stephon Diggs trade. I've brought this up before. The Stephon Diggs trade was a failure. Even if Diggs played well and was a good locker room fit, you traded a second-round pick for 1 year of work. He didn't make it through the full season. He didn't play for you in the playoffs. Them's the breaks sometimes, you know? It's like a hand of blackjack. The Texans had a 20, the dealer got 21. Oh, we're supposed to say that in a way, that hand, the 20, was a success? No, it wasn't. Ultimately, Stephon Diggs didn't get the Texans further in the playoffs, and he suffered a torn ACL. It sucks. It's brutal luck. Like, I don't blame Nick Caserio for it, but I wonder, where would the Texans be right now, say they had that extra second-round pick? Because as the draft unfolded, the guys that they were most linked to went off the board pretty early. First, Texas tackle Kelvin Banks Jr., who we heard a lot about. He was drafted by the New Orleans Saints 9th overall. And then a few picks later, the guy that was compared to the Will Anderson of offense by Daniel Jeremiah from Alabama, Tyler Booker, the Cowboys drafted him. Those were the two guys the Texans wanted. They went off the board at 9 and 12, at least based off of what we heard. And I know there's some people out there who are wondering, wait a second, why was all this information being leaked by the Texans, given that they have been a pretty tight-lipped ship when it comes to trade secrets and rumors over the last couple of years? And I think that's a fair question. But there was a point, I think, where the Texans probably thought those guys would potentially fall and thought that they could trade up and go get them. Was that the right move? Was it the wrong move? We'll find out in a couple of years, you know? I see a lot of people online right now that are mad that the Texans weren't more aggressive. I see a lot of others that are like, well, they got a lot of good value for the trade. I'm just telling you what happened, you know? And I'm trying to go through what might have been going through their heads. But if they had that extra second round pick, that would have made it a lot easier for them to potentially trade up and go and get one of those offensive linemen. I mean, theoretically, going into tomorrow, they could have picked 34, 56, 58, 79, 89, and 99. It's a hypothetical universe. Woulda, shoulda, coulda, blah, 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 blah. But that's one of the paths that I wonder about right now. And the other one I wonder about, and I know a lot of people didn't like him, but I wonder where the Texans would be if they still had Laramie Tunsil. Because while I get why they traded him, it's not like they got a shit ton of value in return for him. What are we talking about? A second, a third, a fourth, a fifth? Like, they got a lot of picks for him, but there wasn't a first-round pick involved. And we're talking about one of the best left tackles in the game, a guy that went to the Texans from the Dolphins for 2 first-round picks. It's Bill O'Brien running the show, different kind of circumstance there. But what I look at when I look at old Laramie Tunsil in that trade and the trade that they made with the Commanders, where would this team be if they still had at least a capable left tackle? Because right now, I don't know who their tackles are. I really don't. They signed Cam Robinson to that 1-year deal. They're paying him as if he's already the starter. But, I mean, didn't have the best year in Minnesota. That could be on Sam Darnold. Wasn't doing so hot with the Jaguars before that. They traded for Ed Ingram. Ed Ingram was not very good last season based off of specific one-on-one metrics that are used to determine how good a guy is blocking one-on-one. In pass protection, you could say the same thing about Laken Tomlinson, whom they brought in. I mean, the guys that they brought in are semi-recognizable names, but are any of those people making you feel better? Do you feel good about Blake Fisher going into year 2? To be honest, I don't. Do you feel good about Juice Scruggs going into year 3? To be honest, I don't. Do you feel good about Titus Howard as a whole? I don't know what position he plays. Is he right tackle? Is he left guard? I also don't know if he's good. I don't know if he's the kind of fit that the Texans need. So at the very least, even if you didn't like Laramie Tunsil, the false starts, the illegal man downfield, the general aloofness when asked about the many mistakes that he has had over the course of his career, the many times that he has said, whether it was back in the day with the Texans, I think it was 2019, maybe 2020, talking about all the false starts that he had his first season with the Texans, or hell, in his introductory press conference with the Commanders, he's been talking about how I'm going to stop the false starts, and he hasn't to this point in his career. So something that obviously was always going to be a problem. Still, he's one of the best tackles in the NFL. Paul, how do you know that? Well, everyone says so. I don't know any better. I'm not going to study these offensive linemen. That's not my job. I leave that for the people that actually know what goes on in the trenches. Okay, thank you. Back off. But it would be nice if they at least had one person that they could point to on the offensive line and say, that guy's good. They don't have that. So that's what I wonder about right now. Where would the Texans be had they not traded pick number 56 to the Bills for Stephon Diggs, and where they'd be if they still had Laramie Tunsil right now? I think we'd be feeling a little bit better. They got picks tomorrow. If you're just joining us right now, pick 34, pick 58, pick 79, pick 89, and pick 99. But no first-round picks made tonight. That is the 5th time in 8 years that they have not had a first-round pick. It is the 2nd straight year that they've had no first-round pick under Nick Caserio. What else happened in the rest of the draft? And if you have any thoughts, you know how to jump in on YouTube at Paul Gallant, on Twitch at Gallant Says, on X at Gallant Says, Facebook.com/Paul Gallant Sports, and on Instagram at Sports Gallant. Joaquim Semio comments on the Stephon Diggs trade. It wasn't even a year. Bad trade, but it had potential. Oh, no doubt it had potential, but it also led to, I think, unrealistic expectations about what this offense could be. I think there were op-eds about how the Texans could potentially have 3 1,000-yard receivers, which I thought in the moment was insane to think of. Like, that just doesn't happen. And I know that we liked the passing attack conceptually, but they also traded for Joe Mixon in the offseason. They were going to run the football a lot. They just needed an offensive line that doesn't stink, that doesn't struggle to run block, that doesn't struggle in pass protection. Astros Flag World Tour comments on Instagram at Sports Gallant. Paul, in my small draft party, we can't be the only ones who fell for the head fake when those 2 back-to-back trades in the mid-20s were announced. Oh, yeah, thinking that the Texans might make a trade up. I thought that that could happen for a moment as well, but it didn't. They stood pat until right before they were on the clock, and then they traded with the New York Giants, who took Jackson Dart. Here's what else happened in the draft. First, Cam Ward went first overall to the Titans. We knew that was going to happen for weeks. As far as Cam Ward goes, he's probably not the guy. Tennessee's a bad operation. I think it's going to be tough for Ward to succeed. I've watched Ward in college. I'm a little biased because I watched Ward go up against Syracuse in one of the last games of the season. Syracuse beat Cam Ward. I thought Kyle McCord looked just as good as Cam Ward, playing for a team with less talent than Miami. But again, this is me watching one college football game. I don't know a damn thing about what Cam Smith's ceiling is, what his floor is. He is on the Titans organization, and I know that that organization is poorly run. It feels like the Titans organization is constantly thinking about the Houston Texans with every single decision that they make. I do not feel like that's a good situation for any quarterback taken first overall. Also, I don't know how many people noticed this, but I think that when Cam Ward took the Tennessee Titans jersey, I'm pretty sure that the number is on backwards for Cam Ward. Look it up for yourself. I don't know if, for whatever reason, the Titans won the top of the number 1. I don't know if it's supposed to go to the right, but I know that most ones, when they have that little arrow at the top, it goes to the left. That is not what the jersey does. Now, I'm looking at this on a mirror with my program right now, and perhaps I had it wrong the whole time. Perhaps I'm the biggest idiot alive. But I saw a lot of other people posting, hey, wait a second, I think that they got their number backwards. Pick number 2, the Jaguars traded up to the number 2 spot to draft Travis Hunter, the wide receiver / cornerback out of Colorado. I will give their 34-year-old GM, James Gladstone, a lot of credit. That is a very ballsy thing to do in your first draft. You are trying to give yourself a better defense, a corner who can perhaps match up with Nico Collins on the Texans, and also a wide receiver across from Brian Thomas for Trevor Lawrence. It's all on Trevor Lawrence now, and this might be his last shot to make it work in Jacksonville, even though he got that extension, because I think that there's some serious questions about how much better he can get. He sails passes. He's inaccurate. I don't think he's the sharpest quarterback. And obviously, the last couple of games of last year, people thought he was out because he suffered a concussion. No, he suffered a shoulder injury. The concussion Azeez Al-Shaair gave him, certainly unnecessary roughness. But, hey, I mean, think about it. Why was he out? He's out with a shoulder injury. So a guy who sails passes, who's randomly inaccurate at times, is dealing with a shoulder injury this offseason. I don't know. We shall see. But here's what the Jaguars traded to go and move up 3 spots from 5 to 2. They traded pick 5, their second round pick 36, a 4th round pick, and a 2026 first round pick just to move up 3 spots. Oh, that's a lot. And the Browns, good for them. I mean, they are, I think, in tank mode. They realize there's only so much they can do with Deshaun Watson's contract still on the books. But, man, that is a haul that the Browns got for the Jaguars just to move up 3 picks. Travis Hunter, to them, I guess, is 2 players. Much like I'm skeptical of how the Titans will manage Cam Ward, I'm very skeptical of how the Jaguars will manage Travis Hunter. This is a very delicate situation. A guy who, for the first time in years, and we're talking about decades, right? Are we talking like pre-AFL, NFL merger? We are seeing a top-of-the-line prospect who can play on both sides of the football. I am very skeptical about this. So, does he play more corner than wide receiver? I would think so. Is he really going to play every single down? How is that going to hold up over a now 17-game season as opposed to playing 11 games in college, 12 games in college, in a conference in the Big 12 that, let's just be honest, isn't as demanding as some of the other big conferences in college football? I'm pretty skeptical that the Jaguars will make it work, but perhaps Liam Goen, who had not the best introductory press conference, and James Gladstone, this GM who looks like he's a decade younger than me. He's only a couple of years younger than me. We'll see if they're able to make things happen. Definitely a new era. Ashton Jeanty, the Boise State running back, went to the Raiders. Top 10 pick. I was surprised by that. Then I thought about it, and I realized, damn, Pete Carroll, who was being coy when talking about Ashton Jeanty at one of their pre-draft press conferences, Pete Carroll was so excited that he is in a city where he doesn't have to deal with, no offense, Seattle Seahawks fans, rather insufferable know-it-all fans who get pissed off about the idea of drafting a running back in the first round. I don't know if it's good. I don't know if it's bad. I would, if I were the Raiders, prefer a quarterback here. Maybe they're going to find themselves in the same situation the Giants found themselves in with Saquon Barkley as a top 10 pick and not a quarterback on that team because the Raiders don't have a quarterback right now. But I look at that pick and I laugh because I know Pete Carroll loves drafting running backs. He likes first-round running backs. And it used to drive Seahawks fans fucking crazy. But now he gets to do this, and who's second guessing him in Vegas? Vegas is just thankful that they have a coach that people actually know who he is. You know, like Gruden was their last guy. He sent some bad emails. We talked a little bit earlier about the two guys that the Houston Texans theoretically wanted. Kelvin Banks Jr., drafted by the Saints, 9th overall. Tyler Booker, taken by the Cowboys. As far as other big pieces, Tyler Warren is supposedly the best tight end available. The Colts took him with their first-round pick. I wonder about that pick because of this. Don't get mad at me. But there are moments where I wonder, hey, could Anthony Richardson play another position? And I say the same thing about Daniel Jones. Is it possible that both Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones are better tight ends than they are quarterbacks? They're athletic guys. They're fast. They're big. They have that straight line speed, some size, as I said before. I mean, they've probably never played tight end before, but could they play tight end? Would they be decent as a tight end? Could they thrive where Tim Tebow failed? I don't know. We'll never see it happen, but that's what Tyler Warren's going to be working with year one. I saw Seth Payne tweeting out, I hope it's going to be like Kobe Fleener. Because that was a former, was he a first? Was he a second-round pick out of Stanford tight end that went to the Colts back in the day? The Ryan Grigson era. Grigson won GM of the year because he got Andrew Luck and he got T.Y. Hilton in one draft class, and he was terrible after that. And since then, I think it's been Chris Ballard running the show for the Colts ever since. And it is kind of surprising he's still there. Perhaps an indictment on Jim Irsay, their owner, who maybe is not of the best mindset. As far as other picks that went down, I put together a list of all the players at the Texans' number 1 and number 2 positions of need. I'm just going to say offensive line as a whole and pass catcher. Off the board, tackle Will Campbell from LSU. He's the short-armed guy. Armand Membu from Missouri went to the Jets. Kelvin Banks Saints. Tyler Booker to the Cowboys. Gray Zabel, a guard from North Dakota State, went to the Seahawks. The Seahawks need some pass protection, especially if they've got Sam Darnold in the house. Donovan Jackson, a guard from Ohio State, went to the Vikings. Josh Connerly Jr., a tackle from Oregon, went to the Commanders. Interesting that they drafted a tackle given they traded for Laramie Tunsil, but they're trying to protect Jaden Daniels, their young quarterback. And Josh Simmons, who is, I think, recovering from a patellar injury, and was someone I was hoping the Texans wouldn't take just because of how things have worked out with Jonathan Mechie, who they brought in. And, you know, John Mechie, I think everyone thought, hey, this was a guy who was projected first-round pick. He's got the torn ACL, and then he has to deal with all, cancer. I mean, I feel for John Mechie. I wish him the best, but I was not hoping the Texans with the last pick or that they made tonight we're going to take him, specifically of all offensive linemen, just because he's coming off of that injury. It's so hard for offensive linemen to get up to speed their rookie year. And I think we've seen multiple times, whether it was Kenyon Green a couple of years ago who dealt with some injuries, or Xavier Su'a-Filo going all the way back to 2014. Sometimes offensive linemen come in and they're just behind the 8 ball from the absolute start. Ultimate Fan Texas, hey, what's up, Steve, is in the Instagram chat at Sports Gallant, and he says, bleep Green Bay. I'll say this about Green Bay. I'm surprised that they hosted an event there. Seems like Packer fans had themselves a good old time out there, but I wouldn't want to go to Green Bay, Wisconsin this time of year. I'd only want to go to watch a football game. The stadium does look cool. I know there's a lot of history there, but Green Bay, Wisconsin, I've done a past Gallant Says episode before about Green Bay, and there's not a lot of attractions there. Ultimate Fan wanted Matthew Golden, who the Packers drafted out of Texas. Here are the pass catchers that are off the board, because with all these offensive linemen gone, I think it stood to reason if the Texans made a pick, they would have taken a receiver. So you have Travis Hunter, of course, off the board to the Jaguars. Tetaroya McMillian from Arizona went to the Panthers. The 2 tight ends, Colston Loveland from Michigan, went to the Bears. Tight end Tyler Warren from Penn State went to the Colts. We talked about that. And the 2 wide receivers that have been linked the most to the Texans, Emeka Egbuka, who was C.J. Stroud's former wide receiver at Ohio State. The Buccaneers drafted him. And wide receiver Matthew Golden from Texas, of course, as Steve laments, went to the Green Bay Packers. For those who don't know, Golden was rather flirtatious talking about the Houston Texans leading up to the draft, and now he's going to Green Bay. Well, be patient. Maybe 4 years from now, he'll be tired of Green Bay, you know? Think about it from that perspective. Shedeur Sanders, still on the board. I'm not going to lie. I'm surprised by that. I figured somebody would maybe sneak back up into the first round. There was quite the smear job against him by an anonymous NFC, I think, coach who didn't like the interview that he did. And there is a part of me that wonders if the entirety of the NFL is above colluding, trying to show a player who seemingly has a lot of power when he'll get into the league, just given the fact that his dad is Deion Sanders. He's about as media conscious as possible. It's possible. It's certainly possible that there could have been a little collusion about not drafting Sanders in the first round, but we'll see where he ends up. Honestly, if I am Shedeur Sanders, I was feeling pretty good hanging around towards the back of the first round, thinking I might be able to join a contender right away. Per ESPN.com, Sanders is the 8th best prospect on the board. As far as NFL.com is, and if you don't watch the NFL Network broadcast, I do think that you are missing out. The top prospect left on the board per NFL.com is Will Johnson, a cornerback from Michigan. Shedeur Sanders, not very high on the NFL Network list. Interesting. Where is Sanders? Oh man, Sanders on that list is pretty low, and perhaps he's a little higher due to being a quarterback, but no way. How far back is he? Wow. So NFL.com has Sanders as about the 30th best prospect available. NFL.com has him at number 8. As far as potential options for the Texans, just taking a look at these boards and who ranks high. This is a spot in the draft where the best available players are corners. The Texans have plenty. Edge rushers, a running back in Trevion Henderson, and some defensive tackles as well. There's also Elia Arroyo. I don't think the Texans should be opposed to taking a tight end because I think that when you look at Dalton Schultz, there's not a lot of physicality there, you know? When you look at Brevin Jordan, you don't know he's going to be back. They've got Irv Smith in the mix, and Cade Stover, I think, is more of a receiving tight end. D6 Chris, HTX, comments on Twitch. Aklon says, did I miss the Shedeur Sanders slander, Paulie? The Texans need to go for Shedeur Sanders since C.J. Stroud is washed. Shut your mouth, sir. Bad. You're a bad Twitcher. Don't say that. Come on now. Stroud ain't washed. He had a bad season compared to the sky-high expectations that we had for him. And I do not think that his struggles were all his fault. So there you go, guys. I mean, they did nothing. For the 5th time in 8 years, the Texans did not have a pick in the first round, but this time it was voluntarily a decision that they made during the first round of the drafts. If you're just tuning in, they traded pick 25 to the New York Giants for a second-round pick tomorrow, pick 34, a third-round pick tomorrow, 99, and a 2026 third-round pick. I think it's a lot. It's a pretty good return so that the Giants could trade up and go get Jackson Dart. They have 5 picks tomorrow as currently stands, 34, 58 in the second, 79, 89, and 99 in the third. And then on Saturday, they have 1 6th-round pick, number 179. They have 4 7th-round picks. How about that? Woo. Hang on a second. Yeah, I think that the trade tracker that I looked at did not update what the Texans have left. Let's see here. They have 2 6th-round picks. They have their 3rd overall pick in the 6th round, the 40th overall pick in the 6th round, and the 20th pick in the 7th, the 25th pick in the 7th, and the 39th pick in the 7th. So they have 2 6ths and 3 7ths. So I got to update that. Apologies, everybody. Anyway, it's late. I'm tired. Got up early this morning after doing a live stream at 3 a.m. last night to talk about the Rockets, their loss to the Golden State Warriors. But I appreciate everybody who tuned into tonight's edition of the Gallant Says podcast. We generally do this weekdays, 4 p.m. Central Time, live on YouTube at Paul Gallant. If you haven't already, please like this video and subscribe. On Twitch at Gallant Says, give me a sub. On X and Twitter at Gallant Says. On Instagram at Sports Gallant. If you haven't already, follow me. Like this video if you can. Facebook.com as well, /Paul Gallant Sports. Like my page. After the fact, it's available wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe, rate, and review me on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify. If you roast my ass, I'll read it. Wonder if there's going to be any coming from Golden State Warriors fans over the next couple of days. Until tomorrow, after the 2nd and 3rd round of the NFL draft, we're going to do another late show tomorrow. Hopefully the Texans make some picks. We'll have some things to actually say about it. I am merely Paul Gallant. So long, farewell, have yourselves a wonderful